back to Always Learning, and what are we doing today?
We're learning.
Yes, we're learning how to make summer sausage, and I'm with Craig Noah, and he's going to show us how to make it. And I made it last year out of some venison deer I'd killed, and I used about 80% venison and about 20% pork, and I used the same recipe Craig used and kind of told me about, and it didn't turn out as well. So now I'm here trying to learn from the masters. So Craig, why don't you just walk us through kind of how you make summer sausage?
So the summer sausage I've made, as he's suggested, is the 80-20% rule works for me. I'm fortunate to normally have some sort of ground wild beef, venison or elk, but you can do the base as a hamburger as well. And then adding 20% of flavor and or fatty, so it can be something as simple as just pork fat or beef fat, but you've mentioned that you can use the pork butt in the past.
Yeah, I just got an 8-pound pork butt. I did like 24 pounds, so that was 30 or 20%, and then I just ground it up. So you're using bacon today, right?
Yep, my cheat, which certainly changes the flavor of mine, is I just use bacon.
Who doesn't love bacon? Yeah,
bacon makes everything better. So for the 4 steps that we need to do today, it's pretty simple. First, we're going to grind all of our proteins, the bacon and what's already ground venison, even though the regrind makes it a little easier to work with. Once we have it all ground, we're going to then do mix. So we're going to add the seasoning. In this case, we're using a Lebanon Bologna as the name of the seasoning. Ultimately becomes summer sausage as far as how it's tastes and served.
But you can use whatever mix you want. It's just the base is the same. It's always 80-20, and then you add your mix. And so you're adding Lebanon Bologna, which I had. Is fabulous.
And I got this at Waltons, the local store here that sells all kinds of stuff for summer sausage, venison, regular sausage. But you certainly can just do this yourself with whatever your flavor likes are.
Yeah, and you can order it online. A lot of places carry it. And then you're also going to mix in, which this really makes, is the high temp mozzarella cheese.
High temp mozzarella cheese, again at Waltons, real simple, but it makes a nice contrast for this particular summer sausage. And then the piece at the end that really I think adds to the flavor, the after flavor of it, is the crushed red pepper.
So you got 80-20. How many pounds are you doing today?
I've got 20 pounds of venison, I've got 5 pounds of bacon, and I've got 2 pounds of mozzarella cheese.
So what is it? What is the poundage? Is that 2 pounds of cheese for? Is that a pound? Well, 1 pound of cheese for like 12 pounds of roughly 12 pounds of meat.
Yeah, I think the recommended amount might be a little bit more than that. I just tend to make the cheese a little bit of an add flavor without overwhelming the product with cheese.
So you're skipping on the cheese, what you're telling me.
Yeah, we're on a budget.
gotta cut costs. So we'll go through it. We're gonna break it down and do each out of the 4 processes. We'll have Craig show us how to do it, and in the end, we'll show you what the final product is. So.
But realistically, the 4 steps are pretty simple. We need to grind everything into one mix. We need to mix in all the additional product. We're going to use a stuffer to put it into the casings, and then ultimately cooking it. Because these casings are non-porous, I just do the cooking in my ovens in the kitchen and not mess with using a smoker or something like that.
Yeah, so Craig has all the nice equipment. You don't necessarily need it all. You can actually get the butcher to grind the pork, and you can get ground beef if you don't have access to wild game meat, and then you can actually mix it. A lot of times you can hand mix it. It doesn't work quite as well. You can actually mix it in a KitchenAid mixer if you have one of those at home. And then the stuffing, you can hand stuff it. It doesn't work quite as well. It's easier with the stuffer, but it can be done. And then of course you can just use your oven if your oven will go down to lower temperatures. Mine really doesn't, so I always have to do it out on the smoker. So.
So as we mentioned, step 1 is grinding up all of our proteins. So in this case, I've got my 20 pounds of venison ready to go. What I've done is I haven't completely thawed this, so it has a little bit of a froze center to it, which helps with the grinding process. And then I've got 5 pounds of bacon. And what I'll do is I'll kind of grind it in there together, a little of each, and that helps with the mixing process for down the road.
And you want to make sure it's frozen, right?
You definitely don't want it completely thawed. You definitely don't want it warm, because from the grinding standpoint, the grinder is not near as efficient if you're working with warm, thawed meat.
Okay, he just kind of binds it up in there. And do you grind it twice or just once?
I just grind it once, part because this is already ground. and so I don't feel the need to grind it twice. That's what I do. There are some people that will go, which you can do also if you have a grinder, is change the plate to the smaller plate to get a finer density. But I find for the summer sausage that this plate, I believe the 3/8 inch plate, works very well.
And if people wanted to skip this, if they didn't have a grinder, they could probably go to one of the butcher shops or the butcher at their local grocery store and ask them to grind up a pork butt or grind up bacon for them, I think.
Any good grocery store that has a meat department. Of course, you can buy this already ground, or you've already got it ground in your freezer. It does not need reground. And so when you buy that butt, you walk over there, have them grind it for you, and then you simply can take care of this with a hand mix.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's see in action here. And what's nice is Craig has it on the floor here. He's got a little cheat where he can step on it and start and stop the grinder, which is, they're not that expensive to add to a grinder.
Safety first.
Oh yeah, safety. I thought safety was third. You go safety first? Okay.
Well, we're worried about liability issues with the YouTube world, so. If you do have a grinder and you don't have the feet yet, it's a great investment because it gives you an extra hand when you're doing this, especially if you're working by yourself a lot.
Yeah, you can really see when the bacon goes in.
That's where all the nutrition comes from.
It's all the flavor. Yeah, I noticed you didn't freeze yours, but I know some people will actually freeze the front casing portion of it to make that internal stuff really cold as well.
Yeah, see, I'm learning today because I hadn't heard that tip, so I'm going to try that next time.
Well, that's on YouTube. That's where all the learning happens.
All right, so through the magic of video, we got that done instantaneously, but we've ground all of our bacon and all of our venison, and this is approximately 25 pounds of protein. So a good thought here is if you are going to hand mix, you probably want to consider working with smaller batches. It'll just aid in the mixing process as you put in all the other ingredients. So now we're going to take this, set it aside, do some dishes, and then we'll get our mixer set up.
Perfect. And do you clean out do you take it off and clean it out?
I do.
And obviously it's unplugged.
Sure, as far as you know, it's unplugged. So it's really pretty simple. And this is the, so this stuff's already been ground, so I'm not worried about it, just putting it in with the mix. And you can see that's the inner workings of this with the, whatever they call that. This is the cutter that runs behind the blade,
as farm people call that an auger.
Well, you'd think a guy who worked at an implement dealership for most of his teenage life would have known that. And then here's the plate, and I mentioned about the plate size. You can get these in different sizes depending on what you're trying to do. So we have 25 pounds of ground venison and bacon right here, and simply just going to transfer it into the mixer. And then once it's in the mixer, when we can have the ability to manipulate the mix a little bit, then we'll start pouring in all the ingredients.
All right, go.
Okay, and we're on step 2. So we've got all of our ground meat in the mixer now. And here's all the ingredients. So here's the mozzarella cheese. This happens to be 2 pounds for our preferred mix. We have Sure gel. We have 3 ounces of encapsulated citric acid. All of these quantities are relative to 25 pounds of mix. Here is our spice mix and the Sure Cure that goes with that, as well as the crushed red peppers. And then this water is where we're going to start.
And how much water's in there?
This is 8 cups, 4 pounds plus or minus is for the recipe.
And that just makes it go smoother when it's mixing?
Correct. You do need some fluid in there to aid the mix, and all of that gets absorbed into the meat before we're done, so it's not like water is running out the bottom when we start putting it into the casings.
Okay.
So the steps are going to be pretty simple. we're going to put our Sure Gel into the water and get it diluted very well. Then we're going to put our Sure Cure and our mix, spice mix, into the water. So this will be one mix here. We'll start with that in the mixer. We'll start mixing for about 5 minutes, at which time we're going to add the cheese and the crushed red pepper. We'll mix for a couple more minutes. At that point, it's getting pretty sticky. It gets to be a little tough to mix. And then we'll stop about 7 minutes. We'll add the encapsulated citric acid and mix it in for about a minute. And at that point, our summer sausage will be ready to put into casings.
Okay, so the bologna is the seasoning. The orange stuff is the cure, which just helps it kind of shelf life a little bit. But tell me a little bit about the Sure Gel and the encapsulated citric acid. What's going on there?
The encapsulated citric acid is part of what gives it, it's an optional ingredient, and gives it that summer sausage twang, if you will. It adds a little bit of a unique flavor to the summer sausage.
And you've got to add that right before, at the very end, right? Like
Right.
if you're gonna leave it out overnight, then you want to leave that out and add that back in, right? Mix it again before you stuff.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay. But the gel, can you do that the night before?
The gel is the piece that if you prefer to keep your mix in the refrigerator overnight so that everything has a chance to start breaking down, then you don't have to put the Sure Gel in.
Okay.
The Sure Gel, by adding it, allows us to then continue this process directly into casing and cooking all in the same day.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, the first step is we're going to take the Sure Gel and dilute it first into our water and make sure that it's got a good mix. You can see it's just an ugly yellow color. We've got that diluted very well. And so next we're going to add our seasoning mix and the Sure Cure. And the nice thing about the Sure Cure when you do this is it also makes your product that you don't have to keep it completely refrigerated all the time. Gives it, besides extending the shelf life. So you don't have to worry about if you're out in the field, throwing it in the pack, keeping it with you. Now, obviously, there's a lot of salt in these mixes, so you're not going to be able to dilute this that well in the water. We'll make sure that when we get to that, when we pour it in, we'll scrape the bottom of the pan here to make sure we get everything in. So, but this is just trying to help get it started before we start mixing in the mixer.
Yeah, I didn't realize. You know where summer sausage gets its name?
I do that.
Well, that's because they basically made it similar to a sausage, but you could carry it with you during the summer when you're out in the field.
Once again, I'm learning.
Yeah.
And again, we're using a mixer for this, and this is for convenience, and plus it allows me to work with larger quantities at one time. But everything that we're doing here can be done on any scale. You can adjust the recipes down to 5 pounds, 10 pounds at a time if that's where you're more comfortable. And we probably ought to reiterate, if you don't have a mixer, you will be best served at least to start with maybe a 5 or 10 pound patch until you figure out what you're most comfortable working with, especially during the mixing process. Your hands will get cold and tired pretty quickly if you're manipulating all that ground meat. All right, so the first step is we've got in our water mix, we've got our seasoning, our Sure Cure, and our Sure Gel, and we're just going to start mixing that into the product. We're looking for about a 5-minute mix, 7 minutes total. The hardest part's getting it in there to begin with. And as we mentioned, when you get to the bottom of this, with that cold water, you don't get great. Everything dissolves, so it's just important to get all the good stuff out of there and into your meat. And then I keep my spatula handy as I'm mixing, because from time to time the meat itself will get kind of clogged up on the edges and might need a little bit of help.
How strenuous is that?
It's really not.
It's not?
No. At this point, it hasn't really started congealing yet, so this first few minutes is pretty easy.
And what are you looking for when you're mixing? Like you said, like you're gonna do it for 7 minutes, but what, I guess once we get it there, you can kind of show us what you're looking for. It's like a tackiness, right?
So it's attacking this. So in this case, you saw when we were grinding how the bacon looked different than the venison, and you can
Yes.
see the bacon in there. So I'm looking for just good consistency with the mix there.
Okay.
So when we get to the last couple minutes after we add the cheese and the red pepper, then I'm really looking for clumps. And if they're not mixing right, then I'll come in and sometimes I'll just reverse my mixer,
Yep.
and that actually kind of helps get rid of some of the clumpiness. Or just sometimes if I feel like something's sticking or I get stuff that's hanging out up here on the edges, I'll just push it back down in there and let it live as we go.
I gotcha.
So as you get going along, the first couple minutes you don't think it's much, but it does get a little tougher over time. So if you've got a teenage son who likes to eat summer sausage, he should probably be down here running the mixer. That'll help the process a lot.
Yeah, I've tried to make making summer sausage a family tradition where we get all the people that are willing to help and help stuff and grind and mix. I think that kind of makes it fun for the whole family and less strenuous.
Yeah, there's always more volunteers for the eating than there are to make.
Yes, there always are because it is so good.
So we've gone about 5 minutes on the mixer, and you can see if you look at the product, it's got a consistent moisture content to it. The bacon pieces and the venison pieces seem to be pretty well mixed. So we're going to stop there and add our next two ingredients, which will be the mozzarella cheese and the red pepper. One of the things I like with the mixer is I try to run the mixer while I'm adding these products,
Okay,
and that just again helps get it
evenly mixed.
Earlier in the process.
So what are you adding in now?
Yeah, now we're going to put in the red pepper flakes.
And you put the whole jar?
For convenience, it's a yes. I put in
That's
the
your
jar,
mix. That's your
net weight 1.5 ounces, which I'm sure is just per the recipe.
We'll check that. We'll fact check that.
That's the other cool thing about summer sausage is you can get as creative as you want. Some people do jalapenos. You can find the actual summer sausage mixes that are spicier than others. So you can try a lot of different things. And that's another reason why smaller batches make more sense, is if especially for experimenting. So we got our mix all done. And what I'm going to do is take the meat out of here and get it back into a container for simplicity of transferring to the stuffer. But also, as we talked about, this is starting to gel. And we want to get this washed up as soon as possible, because that will start sticking to your equipment pretty quickly and gets a little hard to clean up.
So could you take it straight out of there and put it in the stuffer?
You could.
You could.
I do this out for my convenience for cleanup.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So this one has a set screw on each end. I've just removed the two set screws and pulled this out, which will really make it easier to get the product out of the mixer. And again, just get this, recover all this good stuff here, get it in the bin here. So when I first started this process, when I was taking stuff out of the mixer, I was really worried about getting every morsel because of all the hard work that goes into that mix. But the stickiness of this, you just have to accept the fact there's going to be some waste during the process. Okay, so now we're on step 3, which we need to take all of our mixed and ground product and get it pressed into casings in anticipation of step 4, which is the cooking. One thing we failed to do was show you that when we very first started, we submersed these in water. These casings need to be saturated in order to work correctly as we stuff them.
And how long did you leave them in there?
We were in there for about an hour. I've cheated and done like 30 minutes sometimes in an emergency, but it doesn't hurt to leave them in there longer either, just so long as they're good and saturated before you get started.
It just helps with the flexibility, right?
Correct.
When you're stuffing. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. So,
and I noticed you've got some happy holidays.
We are. Some of these are going to be given to the neighbors, so we've got the spreading the holiday cheer, even though it's January.
Yeah, very fun.
So the stuffer is another item, as you can see, bought from Waltons. We'll have to fill this probably about 4 times or so to get through all the product we have here. So it's got a plunger here that obviously pushes down. The product's going to come out here. One of the things I've done is I've bought this food grade silicone. In the past, I've had a little trouble with this getting a little sticky. So I always spray this rubber seal with silicone to start the process each time I reload the canister. I've got this strategically set up with just a lid for a little bit of quality control. But this tube, this is pretty cool. This flips out backwards. And then you can just, if you want to come around this side, then I just hand load this to start with.
And you just get it all the way full.
Yep.
Like 3/4.
Yeah, and because of the tube and size on this one and everything, as you can imagine, we'll get started. There'll be some that'll stay in the canister every time, and then we'll worry about emptying that tube at the very end. So we've got product in here. So this particular stuffer has 2 gears. It's got a fast gear, and then you come down here and it's just a different gear ratio, so it makes it a little easier to turn. We take a casing, open it up, put it over the tube. Of course, the one we want to video is this. And on the summer sausage, I found from a quality standpoint, you want it to be pretty well packed in there. So I always get it all the way on there and try to keep some pressure on it, and then let the pressure of the stuffer kind of push it out. And I always, probably to my detriment, I always leave them a little bit short, so I've got plenty of casing down here in the end, so I can get a good twist on it and get it compressed pretty well. And you can see the casing's actually perforated. It does, so allows it to pack in there pretty good. These are hog nose pliers. Put those on here.
Yeah, that's
Squeeze,
a little nicer
let go.
than the pair I got. So
We're good to go. And repeat.
And I'll see if I can't find as much of this kind of similar equipment and put in links below. Oh, we're doing a Christmas one. Nice.
The casings do come in different sizes. Tim and I were just talking about the 1-inch casings actually make, they end up being about a ½ pound each. And from a serving perspective, they actually are a nicer size, or about big around. When you cut the individual slices, they're perfect bite-sized cracker sizes. And you probably don't have to worry about his waste as much, because they're, like I said, they're a ½ pound every time you cut one, as opposed to like these, which are a pound.
Yeah, I mean, when we have them, we usually go through 2. When you bring one, we usually eat 2.
As a starter.
Yes. I mean, it'd be disrespectful if you didn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you guys are good though.
We choked them down. Now, I will say this bologna mix is it's the best I've had. I've bought summer sausage in the past, the stores. This is better than anything I've ever had. It literally, maybe it's the bologna, maybe it's, I mean, the bacon, maybe it's the cure in the bacon, but it literally almost melts in your mouth.
And I have to give credit where credit's due, but this recipe, including the red pepper and the mozzarella, and then using the Lebanon Bologna instead of just a straight summer sausage, this recipe actually was given to me by the dude at Waltons. And once I tried it, I knew that he had put me on to a good thing.
Yeah, they're so helpful there.
So we got all of our products stuffed in the casings, and we're down to just what's left over in the tube. So instead of trying to fill one more tube, I'm just simply going to make this casing short, and then we'll take a new casing and put it on here. And using the handed-in spatula, simply use the tube to get the product pushed down into the tube like this. And then we'll get what's left here. Kind of do the same process. That way we don't waste any more of the good stuff than we have to. We'll give this to the neighbors who, we don't like as much as some of the other ones. Same process. You just, at the end, you want to make sure that it's well compacted in the tube.
Is that what we call the Hamel shear?
Yes, we're going to send this to Ohio COD. Maybe he'll return some elk for our benefit. So, and about 27 pounds of product.
Okay, very good. And now what's left is just, we're going to cook them?
That's right. We'll take them upstairs. We'll fire up the ovens. We're going to try to cook them as slow as we can, even though we're using typical ovens. My ovens can go down to 170. So we'll put about probably 8 tubes on a cookie sheet in each oven. Put it at 170 for an hour. That'll put the temps probably around 110 or so. Bump the temperature up to 200, and then maybe another hour there, and kick the temps up to 250 to cook them out to an internal temperature of like 165.
Perfect. Okay.
One of the final steps I do before baking is clip the ends of the casings. As you can see, you get a little bit of excess product in there, and these strings are really intended for a vertical smoker, which I don't have. So before I cook it, I simply clip these off a little closer and then finish my cooking that way, so that it's just a general appearance item, but I think it it also just it makes it taste better just because it looks better. Okay, we made it to step 4, which is we need to cook this. Summer sausage is one of those things that's going to be best cooked as slow as possible without spending the rest of your life here trying to get them up to 165 degrees. So my strategy is we've got both ovens set to 170 degrees. We actually using the convection oven on these time. I've never tried that before, but I think it's worth looking into. I've got my casings here set on 2 cookie sheets. I'm able to comfortably put 8 casings on each one. With space for another one here or there, but I think having some extra air around the casing helps the cook process and as well as consistency. So we're going to go 170 for about an hour, and I'm going to check the internal temperatures. I would expect them to be around 110, which I'll bump it up to 200 for about another hour, and then we'll bump it to 250 to cook them out to 165. Every time I open the oven, I'm going to take that opportunity to move my casings. I'm going to flip them end for end. And sometimes I'll even take these and move them to the middle, just again, so that the heat in there is not necessarily going to be perfect, and I'm getting consistent cooking on top and bottom. And so I'll try to flip them both times that I have the oven open, check and temp. So in about 3 hours, we'll be ready to take them out, hopefully be up around 165. That's Mowgli, if you heard him in the background. Then the final component of this is creating some sort of an ice bath. So at the point you've got your internal temperature where you want it, be standing by with some cold water with some ice in it in your sink, and just dump them in there. And that'll stop the cooking process for you. And I think, again, makes a better product. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes in there, and take them out and just let them have a real good dry.
And then do you refrigerate them after that at any time, or they're just ready to go?
They're ready to go as far as consumption. For long-term storage, if I will vacuum seal them, like 2 or 3 in a bag, and freeze them for long-term. But in short term, like some of these are going to the neighbors over the weekend and next week, I'll just refrigerate these right now.
Perfect. And then how do you tell what the temperature is? I see you got like a gauge or something.
I do. So this is a very simple stick thermometer, digital stick thermometer, and just get it in, try to get it into the middle of the casing to get a decent read on what the middle temperature is. Of course, it's always going to be like any piece of meat. It'll be a little warmer on the ends, but just trying to get that internal temperature to 165.
And 165, okay. All right, well, let's put them in and see where we get to.
Here we go.
And you just put one in each oven?
Yeah, I do. Again, for heat consistency, I think it serves me best. And with the number of casings we have to cook today, we'll be able to finish this total thing probably about 6 hours or so. So we'll get it done yet today.
And these are the pounds? The pound ones.
These are 1 pound.
And so the smaller ones, how fast do you cook those? Like what? Go through the step.
Sure. So I use the same temperature as 170 just because that's the lowest setting that my oven will go for about an hour. And then if I kick that up to about 200, they'll cook out, because they're only 1 inch in diameter. They'll cook out in about another hour. So I'll cook 12 casings, which is 6 pounds, and it takes about 2 hours to cook those to temp.
Okay.
So the sausage has been in the oven for about an hour now at 170 degrees. So we're going to check them out, check the internal temperatures, flip them, and if we're where we think we are, then we'll kick up the heat on the ovens a little bit. So internal temperature is probably a little lower than I would have thought. We're about 86, 87 degrees.
And what were you thinking? Maybe 110?
I think we'd be 100, 110. Maybe check another one here.
But you usually do the smaller chubs, right?
Exactly. So yeah, we're in the mid 80s right now. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes. So I think we'll probably, on this first batch, we'll just go ahead and stick them back in there for another 20 or 30 minutes. Try to get them up over 100. There's nothing magical about that number, but just make sure they're good and cooking before we kick up the temperature.
Is that so you make sure you get the center cooked before you cook the outsides?
Yeah, correct. So when they're 2.5 inches in diameter, of course, the outsides are cooking faster, but we want to try to get it all closer to the same temperature and then finish cooking them out as we get closer to 165.
Perfect.
So we finally reached the end of the process. We got the cooking and the ice baths done last night, and we let all of the sausage casings sit out to get fully dried before we put them in the refrigerator. So as you can see, we've got about 27 1-pound sausages to enjoy or give away to friends. One of the things we talked about early was when we were stuffing the casings, making sure that it was compacted very well. So here's a great example. This is a casing that was used with the stuffer. It's consistently packed. Here's one that we hand packed at the end with whatever was left. And you can see there was a lot of shrinkage with the meat. The quality of the meat, the taste is all the same. It's just an appearance thing, especially if you're planning to give it away. So we finally reached the end of the process. We got the cooking and the ice baths done last night, and we let all of the sausage casings sit out to get fully dried before we put them in the refrigerator. So as you can see, we've got about 27 1-pound sausages to enjoy or give away to friends. One of the things we talked about early was when we were stuffing the casings, making sure that it was compacted very well. So here's a great example. This is a casing that was used with the stuffer. It's consistently packed. Here's one that we hand packed at the end with whatever was left. And you can see there was a lot of shrinkage with the meat. The quality of the meat, the taste is all the same. It's just an appearance thing, especially if you're planning to give it away. So here's the final test. We're going to cut open one of the sausages to take a look at the inside and ultimately give it its final taste test. So like all good cuisine, it's important to have the right utensil to enjoy it. So we're going with the Bowie knife. So here's what we got. As you can see from the middle of that, it seems to be consistently cooked, has a great color to it. I look forward to trying this right now.